Welcome back. Hour number 2, the OKPREPS Round Up here on your home for sports and sports animal, as well as streaming all over the world on okpreps.tv/roundup. I am joined by Ben Johnson. I am your host, Michael Knights. Again, we want to ask to hear from you on the OKPREPS Your Take poll of the week on okpreps.tv/your take. The OSSA announced this week that they would be reaching out to 6 venues around the state to open up bidding on the 6A and 5A state tournament. Ben Johnson and I will discuss this in our last segment. The options are ORU's Mabee Center, TU's Reynolds Center, BOK Center, Chesapeake Arena, the Cox Business Center, as well as OU's Lloyd Noble. Is it Lloyd Noble Center or Lloyd Noble Arena?
Center.
It's the center? That's what I thought. The LNC. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Just as I said it. Hey, got to ask the question. So we want to hear from you. If you're watching online, the poll is directly below the video player, so we made it a little bit easy for our viewers online. Joining us now to kick off hour number 2, he is a member of the Rivals Network, one of the lead writers on Soonerscoop.com, and a good colleague, and always enjoy talking recruiting. Josh McQuistian. Now, look, man, I've talked to you several times, and I've never once had to say your last name. So, for the love of God, please tell me how to pronounce your last name.
Josh McQuistian would be the last name, and I realize that's probably the least likely way for that name to come out when you look at it on paper, but that is the way it goes.
I would have pronounced it exactly like that, so I shouldn't have even asked. I should have just rolled with it and acted like I knew what I was talking about.
Just so you know, Josh, he's been saying it wrong all morning, so we got to hold him accountable for that.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, you know, like I said, I mean, I work with guys with the last name Radosevich, so in all honesty, I'm secondary as far as last names go.
Well, at least he can go by Ratto.
Exactly. Yeah. I just call him
exactly.
Eddie. I just call him Eddie.
Yeah.
I just call you Josh. I stick on the first name basis. Hey, Josh, first off, thanks for joining us this morning. Love talking recruiting, especially about this 2016 class, because while it doesn't have the elite All-American type talent that some of the classes have been in the past, it's very deep, and we've already seen over 20 in-state kids collect Division I offers. And I'll start off the segment with this question. Who do you believe right now is the best prospect in Oklahoma in the 2016 class?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, it's such a tricky thing, and I know you guys both live it and talk about it too, because you always get into that player versus prospect. And for me, I think maybe the best prospect is Noah Jones. I know I'm kind of on an island with him, but I just love, for those that don't know, the tight end defensive end from Southmore, a guy with just a huge frame, great body, and really, and again, the things we have to say in recruiting that are just crazy. But, Noah Jones is a guy that, to me, honestly, everybody talks about him as a defensive end. I know he's talked about maybe moving into defensive tackle. But the people I've talked to and just watching with my own eyes, I think Noah Jones' best future maybe is a left tackle. And that's kind of where you get into that player prospect thing. He's never played left tackle in his life. His dad was a collegiate track sprinter, so you would think that wouldn't make any sense at all. But with a guy with his frame, his athletic ability, I think could just be an all-world left tackle. But he's going to need 2 or 3 years at least to become, to even start to scratch the surface of being that kind of guy.
Well, you talk about him, and earlier this week he did pick up an offer from Kansas State, adding to offers he currently holds from Navy and Toledo. So you're not crazy, and I ranked him in our top 5 as far as 2016 prospects. So you're definitely not out on an island as far as the best prospect. I still think there's a couple other guys that are definitely in the running. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about position-specific prospects. Let's start at the quarterback position. Micah Wilson at Lincoln Christian is a guy who I really like. I think he's the most consistent of the quarterback prospects. Him and Terry Wilson battling as far as, who's the best. You also throw in Chandler Garrett from Mustang. Let's talk about those 3 guys. Wilson, both Wilsons, as well as, of course, Chandler Garrett, who picked up his first Division I offer. Been a long time coming for the Mustang product. Those 3 guys, they bring different games onto the field, but they're all very impressive.
They are, and it comes into that question of what do you like? I mean, what are you looking for in a quarterback? To me, I think you're dead on. Michael Wilson is the safest bet of the 3. If I had to pick one of those 3 guys, it's going to be at least a couple-year starter going to play at a good high level, Michael Wilson would be my guy. I think there is very little doubt that he's going to be a good player. He comes from a good football family. He comes from a program that when I went out to watch McCquistian last night, it was really my first time to really watch them practice, and I couldn't have been more impressed with the way they ran things and the things he was processing and the information they had him going through was really advanced for a guy his age. So, like I said, I like him a lot, and he's my number one quarterback in the state right now. Terry Wilson is boom or bust.
Yeah.
I've seen film of Terry Wilson that looks like a Rivals 100 guy, one of the top players in the country. And then I've seen him live, and you'll see a couple of those plays, and then you'll see some stuff, you wouldn't want your, middle school quarterback doing. And so it's just a little bit of that. And I think with Terry, it's just raw. He didn't play a lot as a sophomore, unlike Micah, so he didn't have some of that experience. It was all very fast for him. And you could see as the year went on, he and Del City got better and better and better. So I think they could be, kind of to look to the team stuff, I think they could be kind of a surprise team this year. But at the same time, he's just one of those guys that when you watch him, great frame, great release. I mean, he looks like a guy that's been working at it for a long time, and he really hasn't. So, again, I think he's one of those guys that if you take your time and you're willing to be patient with him, I think he could be a huge surprise down the road. And finally, with Chandler Garrett, he's a guy that coaches are going to go see, and it's why he has one offer. When coaches go see him at practices or camps or things like that, he doesn't shine. He just doesn't, and he knows it. It's something he and I have talked about before. But you put that kid on a Friday night field with the lights on, he is a totally different guy. His release gets better. He looks more confident. He just stops thinking, and he just plays football again. And if he could ever get to that when he goes to these team camps that he'll go to in the summer, he'll pick up offers. He's a big, strong-armed kid that is, one of those guys coaches are going to like. So to me, like I said, I think the two Wilsons are a little bit ahead of Garrett, but all three are clearly FBS players, and really, like I said, they're going to shine in different areas.
Josh, while we're talking about quarterbacks, when we talk about quarterbacks, Mason Fine is obviously going to be a big headliner this year, mainly because of the stats he puts up. Where do you project him going, knowing that, he's going to have great numbers, his accuracy is going to be really high, but, at the end of the day, his body frame is a little bit smaller than the rest of these guys. Is that going to matter to some of these D1 coaches? Ultimately, where do you see him, what kind of program do you see him landing at?
I don't think there's any doubt that it's going to matter to coaches. When you watch Mason Fine's film, and if you were, if you could make yourself think that he's 6'2", he'd have 30 offers.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's just no way that it doesn't play a role. And I know that's not really what you were saying, but, it is. It's one of those things, and people that don't understand this say, his tape's great, his film's great. The problem is it's for a coach, because at the end of the day, if something goes wrong with the quarterback you offer, the premier position in the game, if you offer a guy and then he doesn't pan out, well, it's fine to say, okay, this kid was 6'3", had a great arm, his high school stats were good, it just didn't work out. He didn't buy it. When the kid's 5'10", you have to answer for that. Why did we go after this guy who clearly was shorter than the other guys we liked? All these sort of things. It's an obvious knock, and that's what hurts you. It's one of those things. It's just like the running back that runs 4.8. Sure, his film's great, all those things are great, but he can't run away from anybody. So people are going to knock him for it. And like I said, whether it's fair or not is irrelevant. But to get to the question of where he ends up, I think Mason Fine's either going to end up at a FCS school, Sam Houston State or something like that, which he would go to one of those places and just light it up. I mean, it would be fun to watch him do it. But at the same time, would it shock me if, come late next January, some school like an Arkansas State or somebody, kind of that recruits the area, knows it pretty well, and is going to have a long time to evaluate him, would offer him and take his shot late? No, it wouldn't. I mean, he's that good, he's that impressive. But the reality is, I mean, he's, 5'9.5", 5'10". I had a chance to see him at the Rivals quarterback challenge a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I loved him. I loved watching his feet. I loved everything about his game. Again, if he's 6'3", he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But it's just a reality that he's small, he's light. You kind of worry about not just the height, but he's going to be probably 175 pounds, 180 pounds max in college. That could get you killed playing against certain competitions. So, again, I think he'll end up at an FCS school, but it won't shock me if he ends up at a small FBS.
We're talking recruiting with rivals Josh McQuistian, also of Soonerscoop.com, does a great job covering Oklahoma recruiting here in the state. And we're talking the 2016 class. Let's switch gears and talk running backs, because also I think that group is deep. Justice Hill of Booker T. Washington has already committed to Oklahoma State, also holds an offer from Louisville. You talk about running backs, you also have to mention Quan Hogan of Norman North, as well as Jeremy Lewis of Lone Grove, a small school kid, but a kid who has really built himself up. He's already grabbed a couple offers from Arkansas State and Tulsa. Then you have a couple guys who don't have offers yet, like Darren Williams of Edmond Santa Fe. I know Jamal Shaw picked up a small school offer at Broken Arrow, but there's a really good running back group in this state, and it's headlined by some of those guys who already have offers, but some of the ones who don't, they will soon enough.
It tells you how much football has changed when you go over that list of running backs and think of how few offers are amongst those guys. Quan Hogan is 6 foot, 200 pounds, looks exactly like what you would want a running back to look like. Now, I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying his game is, he's one of the top 10 running backs in the country or anything like that. But for him to only have a couple of offers, it tells you how much the running back has become devalued in college and the NFL. I mean, it's just a different position than it used to be. You guys can remember it just like I did, back in the days of James Allen and those kind of guys, when the running back was really the first position you went and tracked down. You had to have a good running back if you were going to compete. And it's just not that way right now. So it's changed the whole game and the way everybody looks at this stuff. Jeremy Lewis, I mean, you talk about a big, long – when I watch him, he reminds me of Damon Parker. That's exactly who I see when I watch him, with his long strides and that long speed he has. I mean, now, is he that good? I don't know. But that's who he reminds me of. And if you think about it, if this is 15 years ago, he's got a dozen offers by now. Yep. I mean, it's just that way. So, like I said, I like all those guys. And guy that I really like that I'm shocked hasn't picked up more attention is Darren Williams from Edmond Santa Fe. You talk about a guy that will go from, to steal the quotes from the kids, from 0 to 100, man. That's Williams. I mean, he is explosive in those first 3 or 4 steps. And, people love to talk about, well, does he run 4.4, run 4.5? You know what, can you give me 5 yards when I need it? And I feel like Darren Williams is that kind of guy. He's a little smaller, but he's a tough runner. And, again, he's explosive in short space, and I think that's one of those things that people tend to overlook with running backs. Emmitt Smith was not a 4.4 guy, but you know what? In a tight, quick space, he could make plays. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's Emmitt Smith. It's not, a 4.4. But that kind of is an example. I think people get so caught up in 40 times, they sometimes forget there's a lot of other little things that could amount to a really good running back.
So he's saying that Darren Williams is the next Emmitt Smith. Okay, we got
all right, Josh, no pressure there.
Somebody out there take that note.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on him, and I know that you and I both saw him at the Mustang team camp, and from that point forward, we thought, okay, this guy has a chance to be special. One more question on the offensive side. Jordan Brown, a receiver out of Stillwater. I saw him at the Jinx team camp last May and thought, I was there to look at Brandon Prather. I see Jordan Brown just absolutely shine. I thought he was primed for a breakout year. He had some issues with the quarterback going down with an injury, so didn't get to really shine the way he possibly could have. Already picked up an offer from Navy, already picked an offer from Texas Tech. He's been to LSU's junior day. How good could Jordan Brown be compared to some of the receivers that we've seen in the past, like Dahu Green in this last class, Jeffrey Mead in the class before?
Well, first, I want to give you credit, Michael. You're the guy that actually turned me on to Jordan Brown. I didn't know. I didn't know anything about him. I'm with you. I was thinking about Brandon Prather, and you said, "Hey, I just saw this kid. Maybe give him some look." And you saw him, and you were like, "Wow!" Because he is big body, bigger frame than Prather ever was. Probably not as explosive as Brandon was at his best, but still, a guy that clearly had all the tools to be a really good player, and it has the bloodline, obviously going back to his father at Oklahoma State. So, he's, I don't know that I have him quite on that level with Dahu Green or Jeffrey Mead. I don't think there's anybody that, was any bigger a fan. There may have been some that were as much, but Jeffrey Mead's a guy that I screamed potential to me. I just thought he was potentially just a huge, huge difference maker. Now, we'll see how that goes. But, I wouldn't have him on that level, but to me, you look at Texas Tech, he's completely capable of playing at a place like that.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of surprises me that neither of the in-state schools have really given him even a token amount of attention so far. So, we'll see how that goes going forward. I kind of expect that to change because obviously, both schools are so receiver-heavy. But, no, I mean, Jordan Brown is you talk about a guy, you mentioned the LSU. I know he was invited to Georgia's Junior Day.
Yep.
When you're talking about schools from those states that have so much talent inside, still trying to bring you over to their campus, that's no small thing. It doesn't mean an offer's coming, but it's not to be ignored either.
Flipping to defense, a guy who I really like and who's really blown up over the last several months, a guy who you saw and really in your last rankings put him up high after watching some film on him. Jimmy McKinney, a linebacker out of Oologah, also doubles as a running back for the Mustangs, helped lead Oologah to a state championship game appearance. McKinney's a guy who's really started to pick up steam. Air Force, Arkansas State, Missouri State, Stephen F. Austin, and Wyoming. Do you see him as a linebacker at the next level? And is that Arkansas State, Tulsa, Wyoming type program the limit for him, or could he jump into a Big 12 school?
I really like Jimmy McKinney. He was a guy that I completely admit that I didn't know about. Oologah is obvious. I mean, you guys know as well as I do, when it comes to recruiting, they're not a place you usually have to stop. They've been a good program, but usually not those caliber of guys. But with him and Brock Martin, it sounds like that's about to change for me. So, with McKinney, I think he has the potential to be a Texas Tech guy, maybe even backdoor into, an Oklahoma State, kind of that next step up even beyond those guys. He's so instinctive. I mean, when you watch him on tape, that guy is never out of position. He is right where he wants to be, and you'll have to forgive me. I'm out at the Under Armour camp in Houston, so you hear some foghorns going off in the background. But, I love him on tape. Now, to me, it's a matter of I haven't seen him in person. I actually get to tomorrow. He'll be at the Under Armour camp in Dallas, and I kind of get a chance to size him up. If he is as big as he's listed, somewhere around 6 foot, 6'1", 220, there's no reason he can't be a Big 12 linebacker. He moves well. He's maybe not elite athletically, but he's certainly not a guy that you think of as a negative with his ability to move in space. So I like McKinney a lot, and I love him as an inside guy. You just can't, people love to, again, we talked about 40 times. People will look at times and speed stuff, and then they'll forget, on film, if you have that split second, that instinct, that feeling of what's about to happen, it can make up for a lot of shortcomings physically. So that's one of those positions where, to me, you can sometimes kind of skirt, he's got to be this tall or he's got to be this fast, and just focus on how talented the guy is. And I think McKinney's got some stuff.
I'll tell you what, and look, I know we could end up talking to you for the rest of the hour. We're kind of up against it. I do want to get two guys out before we let you go, and I want you to talk a little bit about them. The Jinx duo, a couple years ago we saw Stephen Parker and Dylan Harding be that 1-2 punch for the Jinx defense. This year it's Austin Quillen and Dylan Stoner. Stoner recently picking up an offer from Arkansas. Stoner's a guy who I actually liked a little bit more than Quillen just because he has that it factor. You talk about instincts, and this guy has it. He's just a playmaker. He reminds me of Dylan Harding from a couple years ago. Not as tall, but still that type of player. And then, of course, Austin Quillen moving from the safety spot to linebacker part of last year has really helped his game, and he's picked up offers from all over the country as well. Those two, it seems like it was only yesterday we were talking about Stephen Parker and Dylan Harding as the 1-2 punch for the Trojans, but now they have it again with Austin Quillen and Dylan Stoner.
Yeah, how shocked we all are that Jinx just reloads. Who knew?
No.
So, and I have to, and everybody's going to turn off the radio in Tulsa. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and, you have to forgive me for this. The first year I can ever remember that I saw neither Jinx nor Union during the season, and I have to own that because Dylan Stoner is a guy that I did not know about until way too late, way later than I probably ever known about a good Jinx player. But, the coaches had told me about him, and I saw him, and I kind of liked him, but you didn't know. I mean, it was just a spring practice. You didn't want to get too excited. But then when I had a chance to see his tape, you were like, wow, this guy is really, really good, and I couldn't figure out at a place like Jinx how he didn't already have 5 or 6, 7 offers. I'm kind of with you, and I'm always scared of it. The first time I watch a tape, I tend to kind of love her guy, I like her guy. And then the second time, I kind of go back and really have my real opinion. So with Stoner, with my first ranking, when he got in the second update, I kind of felt like I was overcorrecting too much. But as I go back and watch more, I think I might be with you. I think I might need to move him ahead of Quillen just because he's got a little bit more size. He fits more naturally at a position, even though he's kind of an athlete. With Quillen, that's my only question. Where do you put him? Like you said, he got better once he got closer to the line of scrimmage. Well, does that work in college? Is he big enough to handle that in the college game? So it's one of those questions with both those guys, but you're right. At the high school level, it's almost unfair that Jinx has two guys like that running around the secondary.
I'll tell you what, man. I mentioned it earlier. We could talk the rest of the hour. So this only means that we need to have you on more often because there's definitely a lot of guys who we did not mention here today that are extremely talented. Calvin Bundage at Edmond Santa Fe, Max Waraboko at Cassidy, some guys who already have multiple offers, and we don't even mention them. So that just means we have to talk again, right?
You should probably just get used to that 10 o'clock time spot because we'll probably keep bringing them on.
Yeah.
You guys know me. This is all I do all day, every day. I live a sad, sad existence. I talk to my wife and watch recruiting stuff. That's really all I do, so I'm always game to talk.
Hey, Josh, appreciate your time this morning. We'll definitely catch up again once we get closer to spring football.
Great, guys. I look forward to it.
He's Josh of the Rivals Network. Sooner Scoop does a great job. And, look, this 2016 class is something special. It's very deep. Maybe doesn't have the All-Americans like Josh Waraboko or Jalen Barnett, but there's some players in this class that are going to be playing at the Division I level. We could end up seeing, close to the 2008 class or 2009 class, which had close to 50 guys signing with Division I programs. We're already halfway there as far as offers, with 25 guys or so holding Division I offers. So it's definitely going to be fun to check throughout spring as well as the summer. All right, we're way past due to take a break. We got to step aside. When we come back, we're actually going to be live on remote in the gym. I'm going to be catching up with Sean Garner of Excel Performance Training, and we'll be talking about foam rolling, a little substitute for stretching to get you ready for your athletic event, whether it be just an evening jog or if you're one of the athletes who are about to participate in your sport. He's Ben Johnson. I'm Michael Knight. We'll be back with Sean Garner. On the other side of this timeout, it's the OK Preps Roundup on your home for sports, the Sports Animal, and the OK Preps Network.